My name is Emily Parker, and I am 28 years old. Some love stories are simple, but ours was never meant to be. Love, as I once believed, was supposed to be beautiful, something that brings happiness, warmth and certainty. But for me, love became a bittersweet ache, a sacrifice I never imagined making, because I fell in love with the same man as my twin sister. His name was Daniel Carter. He was our best friend, the boy who grew up beside us, who knew our dreams and fears better than anyone. We went to school together, spent our afternoons in the same coffee shop, and walked home side by side beneath the golden hues of sunset. He was always there, constant and familiar, and I never thought anything would change. But life has a way of shifting, of unraveling everything you think is certain. Somewhere along the way, without meaning to, I fell in love with him. And somewhere along the way, so did my sister. Evelyn and I were different in so many ways. I was the quiet one, the one who found solace in books, in art, in the whispered thoughts I kept hidden inside journals. She was the firebold, fearless, always the first to speak, the first to laugh, the first to jump into something without hesitation. But despite our differences, we were inseparable. She was my other half, my mirror, the person who had been by my side since the moment we entered this world. And yet, for the first time in our lives, we wanted the same thing. At first, I didn't know. I thought my feelings for Daniel were my secret, something I carried alone. But then I started to notice the way Evelyn looked at him, the way her laughter softened when he was near, the way her eyes followed him when he wasn't looking. And then, one night, I overheard her talking to our best friend. "Sarah, I think I'm in love with him," Evelyn had whispered, her voice trembling. My heart stopped. I pressed my hand over my mouth, as if that would keep the pain from spilling out. Because in that moment, I realized the truth. I wasn't the only one who loved him. For weeks, I tried to ignore my feelings. I told myself that if I buried them deep enough, they would disappear. But love doesn't work that way. Every time Daniel laughed, every time he looked at me, with those warm brown eyes, my heart betrayed me. And yet, I said nothing, because I couldn't, because I knew that if I did, it would break us, that secrets don't stay hidden forever. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Daniel, Evelyn, and I sat beneath the old oak tree in the park, the same place we had spent countless afternoons together. But this time, the air was different. There was a weight between us, something fragile, something unsaid. And then, Evelyn spoke. "Daniel," she said softly, "we need to talk." I froze. I could feel my pulse hammering in my throat. He turned to her, confusion flickering in his eyes. "What is it?" She hesitated, glancing at me before exhaling shakily. "We know," she said. "We know that we both love you." Daniel stiffened. His expression was unreadable, but I saw the flicker of pain in his eyes, the way his jaw tightened. "You, both." His voice was barely a whisper. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yes," I admitted, my voice trembling. "We both do." Silence, a long, unbearable silence. And then, Evelyn gave a broken smile. "But we won't let this ruin what we have," she said firmly. "We won't let this tear us apart." I looked at her then, my sister, my best friend, and in that moment, I knew what I had to do. because I could see it in Daniel's eyes. I could see who he had already chosen. It was me. He loved me. I could feel it in the way he looked at me. The way his gaze lingered just a little too long. The way he had always reached for me first in moments of quiet. But how could I say that? How could I take him when I knew it would break Evelyn's heart? So I made my choice. That night, I went to Daniel's house. I stood on his doorstep, my hands trembling as I knocked. When he opened the door, his eyes widened in surprise. "Emily, I know," I whispered. "I know you love me." His breath hitched. "Emily, But I love her," I interrupted, my heart breaking with every word. "I love her more than I love myself, and I won't take this from her." Pain flashed across his face. "Emily, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," I said, forcing a smile even as tears filled my eyes. "Because if I choose you, I lose her, and I can't live with that." His hands clenched into fists. "But what about you? What about us?" I took a deep breath. "This is my choice," I whispered. "Love is sacrifice, Daniel, and this is mine." And so, I let him go. A year later, I stood at the altar, watching as Evelyn married the man I once dreamed of calling my own. I smiled through the pain, clapped with the crowd, and hugged her tightly, whispering words of happiness into her ear. And when Daniel looked at me, his eyes searching, questioning, I gave him the only answer I could. I let him go. Some love stories are simple. Some are filled with joy, with certainty, with forever. But ours was written in sacrifice. Ours was a love that could never be. And in another life, maybe things would have been different. But in this one, I made my choice. And for Evelyn's happiness, it was enough. Now, as I look back, I realize that love is not just about holding on, it is also about letting go. I chose to step aside, not because my love for Daniel was any less, but because my love for Evelyn was greater. And though my heart once ached for what I lost, I know now that I made the right choice.